Howdy. Angsty here. Let's launch. You may recognize me from such internet famous television shows like the Plumes of Hazard or the Plumes of Hazard. But I'm not here to talk about that today. I am here to talk about an atomizer. This has been a little bit coming, but I did get some time to do this weekend, and I want to get it done because I want to show it to you guys and do so in a way that you can actually see everything. It's been really difficult to show you this on the show because of, well, it's kind of complex. So let's go. Let's do it. Ooh, sorry, that was a little too much. Welcome back. So what we're here to talk about today, like I said, is an atomizer. And it's not just any other rebuildable atomizer. It's not a tank atomizer. It's not a dripping atomizer. It's not a squonking atomizer. It's not an RDTA. It's not any of those things. What it is, it's a rebuildable atomizer that goes inside of a Boro tank. And that goes inside of a billet box. And if you don't know what a billet box is, that's a billet box. This is a little mod that has been made here in the States for a really long time, and I really like them. Not because they're made in the States, but because they're made really, really well, and the form factor is really unmatched. This size, to have everything all there and contained with an 18650 in it, is fantastic. And not only is it well built, the colors. This is royal purple gray. This is my personal favorite color. But there's a fox that's really cool. Or I don't think it's fox. It's like that, like Guy Fawkes. It's really difficult to really even describe these things because the way they do their colors there, it's unlike anything else that I've ever seen on the market. Anyway, but it's not about the billet box. I just wanted to tell you what the primary thing that houses the Boro tank, and the Boro tank looks like this. So that's not that. That's the battery. This is the Boro tank. So it's a little funny little tank that's kind of all inside of the mod, right? So it's got this funny little form factor because it originally was made to house a cartomizer. If you haven't been vaping long enough to know what a carto is, it was basically like a metal tube with a coil and some like cotton wool around the outside of it, and it kind of held on to juice, and it worked great for a while. But these days, there's way better things on the market than a carto. So anyway, most of the time when you see a Boro, it's going to be inside of a billet box. But there are several other mods out there these days that have the same kind of conveniently sized opening that can take a Boro, including some sausages, we'll put it that way, and also some not sausages, things like the Limelight 5050. This is a tiny little 18350 unregulated with a RAM board inside, a tiny little guy that also takes a Boro tank and then therefore also takes billet box atomizers. So the billet box has been out for a while. So besides the cartomizer, the first rebuildable that I ever saw was the Omen Uno. And that was really nice. It was nice to be able to rebuild and have the vape quality of a rebuildable, and not have to depend on Chinese cardos. Worked great for a while, and then I got a hold of an Hellfire Exo set, or the Addy from the Addy Smith. That changed everything for the billet box for me. It brought several things to the table that had not previously been on the market, and it was a great atomizer, not only for performance but also some of these other features. And if you want, this isn't about the Exo set though, but if you want to watch that, there is a review on the channel. You can watch that if you'd like. But you're probably going to hear the Xeta set a few times in this review because up until today, it's been my favorite billet box atomizer for a really long time. And there's reasons for that. And I'm going to be happy to show and compare and contrast a little bit to this thing. One of the biggest problems about the Exo set is the fact that you can't get one. They made I think it was 2 runs of it, a couple of years ago, and that's it. And you can't find them. And if you find them, and they're probably paying flipper prices for it anyway, whatever. So I even hated doing the review originally because of that. It was already difficult to get a hold of then, and now it's almost impossible. So that kind of sucks, right? So having something out now that you can get a hold of that rivals it, it's good stuff. I'm really happy about it. So back up a little bit earlier, late last year actually. I was contacted by Steven from Haku, and he wanted to kind of talk through some stuff. So I was honored for him to even ask me and provide whatever small amount of help that I could to help him along and help him get products in the hands of smokers to help them not smoke. It was absolutely my pleasure and honor, and I've enjoyed every step of the process because Steven is a cool dude. And and somebody that I would not ever hesitate to give my money when it comes to vaping stuff. So like I said in the intro, this is going to be something that's going to be very difficult for me to describe up here. And the reason is because there's a lot going on in really the best way possible. And it's difficult for me to do that here. It's difficult for me to do on the show. And that's why we are here today to do some up close stuff so I can really give you a tour on all the different things that this thing can do. So let's go right now and let's go up tight and see what's going down. All right, welcome to the up close. So I was about to say, let's do this really fast, but I don't think I can do that with a straight face on, because there's a few things to go over here, and it may take a minute, but I'm going to go as quickly as I can. The reason is because the name of this game is flexibility. That's what the Xeta is. It is flexible like crazy, and you're going to see why here in just a minute. But first, let's go through and show you what you get in the package. Yours may not say admin proto, but I think they all are going to become serial numbered and stuff. I think all of them are coming with this cute little Haku inside Xeta sticker for your Billetbox or wherever you end up putting this thing on. Anyway, so I think that's what I think they all come with that. Maybe that was the first run, I'm not sure, but it's a fun little thing. I actually haven't used mine yet, but anyway, funny little thing. So this is the same Haku packaging that's been coming out for a while, and so I'm gonna open this, but don't freak out. There are a lot of pieces, and I'm going to explain them and tell you what they are all used for. I'm going to just... give me just a minute. All right, for sake of brevity, there's a couple things we can kind of just talk about really quick and get those out of the way. One of the bags you get in there has got an Allen key in there. Obviously, it's the right size to adjust all the Allen or hex-headed grub screws that are on the deck. There's also a couple of spares in there. The other thing that's in there that we can talk really quickly about is there's another bag. This one's got a couple of O-rings in case you needed to replace the one on the deck or the chimney, as well as a metric buttload of additional grub screws, some of which are flat-headed. So actually, in case you lose one of them, or if you wanted to just run flatheads throughout the thing, you can do that. I love the fact that they're included. I've definitely roasted addies in the past that didn't have one included or charged for them on top of that. That sucks. That's not the case here. You've got spares for days. So here is the actual atomizer itself. So these are the three parts. Let's talk about the deck first. Let's bring it up a little closer so we can see what's going on. So from the top, we can see our two poles here. One of them you can see is just a little proud, and we'll probably talk about that later when we go back up top. But the way these posts work, it could not be easier. All you gotta do is drop your little hex head in there and screw it down a little bit, and you slip in your coil leg, and then you screw it back up. Clamped. Done. Tight. Easy. There's no coil, there's no screw heads to wrap your coil around. There's no grub screws going down to jam into your coil, which is going to deform it and just make it a pain in the butt. This is just like all of other Haku stuff. They build so easily. It really is one of the best things about this thing. So the next thing we want to talk about is the other two grub screws you can see here. You can see the two flat-headed grub screws. What these guys are. Let's bring it up a little closer so you can see. As you, when I get this thing reassembled, you'll be able to see it a little more clearly. But just so you can know conceptually what they are is right now I've got this thing as my juice flow control is being maxed out. So I run a high VG juice, so I want to have a large opening for which juice to enter my atomizer. If, however, you're running a very thin e-liquid, like a high PG one that you want for mouth to lung and for a throat hit and all that, you can just take this thing and raise it up, and you can restrict the size of your juice flow hole. Remember, customizability, right? Flexibility. That's what the Haku Xeta does, and this is one of the first things that we're going to talk about that it does. I'll show you how it works in just a minute. So as we go down a little bit, you can see we've got a little branding, Haku, Xeta. I think this is where your serial number is going to go. Remember how I mentioned I was probably going to have to say the Exoset a couple of times? This is one of the reasons one of the places I'm going to do that. The Exoset added this feature, and since then, several other atomizers, including the Xeta, have included it, and I love it. These are 510 threads, man. So when you're building and you're wanting to pulse out your hot spots, when you're building and you're re-wicking and you're wanting to pulse out your Mangiel coil, you can definitely just thread this onto a normal mod right here and pulse it clean. I love it. I don't know why that Daddy Smith did not make this a big deal. They should have, because this is a great idea that needs to be on all of these Billetbox Addies, just for our ease of use as we're the owners and users of these things. So at the very bottom, we can see our positive post. We can see it's been milled out like crazy in order to give us the largest amount of air coming into the thing. And now we're going to start talking about airflow. So just like several other of these Billetbox Addies, Haku has included this little guy at the bottom, which threads on nicely, unlike some of them. But it does thread on nicely, and you can use it to restrict the amount of air that initially enters into your atomizer. Here's the thing. In my opinion, I don't really use this on the Xeta. And the reason is, I don't use this because A, it's not necessary, and B, I find that this style of airflow adjustment is not very precise at best. And at worst, it's actually kind of noisy. I think in order to have it, spinning freely, it's kind of loose, and it ends up just making whooshy noises, and I don't really care for it. But I'm glad it's there. But we're going to talk about some angsty airflow theory here. So right here at the very top, we've got this giant air hole. The problem is if you wanted a restricted lung, or you're wanting an actual mouthed lung, just restricting the air here is not going to really make a great mouth to lung vape. And the reason is this giant hole here. So yes, we can restrict the amount of air that's going into the Addy, but by the time it gets here, that small volume of air has slowed down a lot. And it's just being watered down by this large amount of surface area of our airflow opening here. And if we take some of the most highly regarded mouth to lung experiences out there, like the K-Fun Light or the Rose V2 or a bunch of other ones that did it really well, one thing you will notice for mouth to lung things is the opening here is very small. And in my opinion, that's really necessary to make sure that that small volume of air is still accelerated really nice and fast at your coil to cool it down properly so that you get a good vape. So how do we fix this? How do we make this thing flexible? Because obviously this doesn't work great for mouth to lung, but would work fine for direct lung. So how do we adjust those here? And you adjust them like this. Let's go back down to the table so I can show you what's up. So over here on the side, we have got 4 airflow, well, I call them airflow buttons. I'm not sure what Steven ended up calling them or not, but those things fit in right here in the middle. This is threaded. So in order to get the right kind of vape with the right volume of air that you want for your style of vaping, you can make it happen. All the way accelerated to your coil. So down here at the tightest, we've got a 0.8 millimeter mouth to lung insert. This button is what Fu would say. He would say very tight butthole. This is a very, if you want to feel like you're trying to suck a golf ball through a garden hose, this is your boy right here. Proper mouth to lung. If you want a slightly looser mouth to lung, or a little bit more reasonable, we've got a dual 1 millimeter, and then there's a dual 1.5 millimeter, and then there's a quad 1.5 millimeter. And this guy, if you do the math, it does end up being like a 3 millimeter hole. That's what the total surface area of this would be. In my opinion, there's a lot of friction around all of these holes, so it doesn't feel like 3 millimeters to me. It feels more like 2.5 maybe. In case that bothers you, that's what that is. I run it in the 5th configuration, which is none at all, because I like a restricted lung, and that is exactly what this gives me. But these are certainly there as an option. I think that's really important. So we have talked about the air entering the Addy. We've talked about the air exiting the deck and onto your coil. The last thing we need to talk about airflow wise is getting that vapor that you've now vaporized and getting it into your mouth hole. One of the biggest problems with things like large drip tips or chuff style drip tips is, in my opinion, it waters down, again, just like this, it waters down your vapor before it gets into your mouth now and hits your palate. So I'm actually really picky with drip tips for that same reason on any atomizer. I'm very particular about the inner diameter of my drip tip, and that's because of stuff like this. Haku has fixed it. So not only have they fixed the bottom, which I don't really use, they've totally fixed here, and they've fixed above it too. And they've done that with the chimney. Now on the Exocet, this chimney is just a pipe. But on the Xeta, that pipe is threaded. And it's threaded for these guys. So we have got 3 different inserts. We've got a 5 millimeter, we've got a 3 millimeter, and then we've got a 1 millimeter for your mouth to lungs. So let's raise these guys up a little bit so you can see. Well, it'd be more obvious if I showed you the 3. So we've got a nice conical sort of shape that's right above your coil to direct all of those lovely vapors up your chimney and into your drip tip and then into your palate. that is what those things do, and they are inserted into your chimney like it is. So you just kind of drop it in there. And you can use, if you have a really wide flathead screwdriver, you can do that. I end up just putting my tweezers in there and threading it in like this. So the last thing I did want to mention is you can just bottom this out and have it come all the way down to right on top of your coil, and that's fine. But what I have found is it actually does matter where you leave this thing. It actually does change how the vapors get into your face. It really does. You know, having it all the way down versus middle versus kind of all the way up to the top, it just matters. I think you should definitely put in here the one that you think is going to work, that's going to give you the volume that you want, and then play with it. Play with the height of this thing and see where you like it. I tend to have it somewhere around the middle, not bottomed out and not all the way up to the top, somewhere down in the middle. So the last thing that we haven't really talked about is the barrel. There's not a whole lot going on with the barrel. It really is kind of a deck covering, but there's a couple things that we should probably mention because it does house some important functionality. So as you start to put this thing on there, the first thing you may notice is it's keyed. So remember that, let me get a little closer so you can see. Remember the little screws here? You can kind of see that this thing is actually keyed so that as you slide it down, your juice flow channels are always perpendicular to your posts. You can't mess that up because it's keyed. I think that's great. So now you can kind of see a little bit better how this screw works. So if you're wanting it tighter and to restrict the juice flow channel, all you got to do is raise the screw up. Customizability is just another one of the things that this thing is doing. This thing's crazy, man. There's a lot of pieces, but admittedly, you don't use all of them. You only use the ones that you want, but it is just so flexible. So, all right, let's get out of here. I'm gonna put a coil in here, and I'll show you kind of how you mount it, and then I'll quickly show you how I've got it wicked, and then we can get out of this thing. All right, let's go. All right, I've taken the deck and I've screwed it down into the little fluid momentum, which is a nice little mod that I like. We're going to drop one of our little clamps and drop a coil. And I am currently, you know me, I'm a big fan of the 27 gauge. And I think I've got about a 9 wrap here. So we're going to take this and drop her in. Just about like that. Now, as far as height goes, I do like to keep it right around the top of the 2 posts. And we can adjust that a little bit more finely after we get this thing mounted up in there, right? So I'm going to take this and try to not hit the camera. Now, you do not, and by do not, I mean do not need, I hit the damn camera, sorry. You do not need to go full 300-pound gorilla on this thing. The clamps work really, really well. There's no reason to go crazy. You need a good electrical contact. You need to be able to have the coil to be stable, and that's really about it. So just clamp them down. Don't go crazy. Make sure it's not moving around. Make sure it's the right height, which it is. And that's about it. So let's see if we can get this thing posted out real quick. And let's go. The other thing I do want to mention is we do need to notice here where we're clamping down. We do need to trim this thing really close to the post. Now you got a little bit of clearance there, but it's not a lot. And we do have the barrel coming down right over on top of these things. So do trim these things close. All right, let's get it wicked. All right, so here we are wicked. I'm obviously still using Xeta because, well, it's still the best cotton that's on the market. We've got it wicked nice and tight for our 3mm coil. I was going to show you real quick of how the top cap goes on. You just want to kind of feed it down to make sure you're not grabbing any of your cotton down into the sides. It's going to fit down on those keys, of course, just like as always. We'll just push it all the way back down. So the last thing to do here is you can unscrew it a little bit, and you can do that because it's keyed and it's going to hold it in place. And then grab your scissors and give us a little trim. Now, very similar to the Exocet, I do like a tiny little bit of cotton on the outside, maybe a millimeter or two. So let's snip that off real quick. And you may have to be careful, by the way. These scissors that I have, they actually will cut too much. It'll actually cut too closely, which you don't want, because you do want a little bit of cotton there on the outside, because we're going to make sure that the whole opening here is not only not compacted by the scissors, but also is covering the entire hole, because we don't want it to just have a direct channel for e-liquid to get in there, but we do want it to be covered and not clogged. We'll put it that way. All right, so the last thing that we've got to do here is I'm going to put a little bit of e-liquid on our coil to kind of get it started. I will often put a little bit on the outside just to kind of get the outside going. You may be interested that this handsome fellow right here is my ATV for some reason. You can get yours at Stash e-liquids. You should definitely do that, because abolishment is the bomb. Ooh, actually, you know what would be really good? I haven't done this in a little bit. I think instead of abolishment, I'm going to go Get Pissed. And guess what's really good with a little bit of abolishment in it? Yeah, it's Get Pissed. So Get Pissed is a cactus margarita. Same guys. Stash. Get some. So a little bit on the outside to get that going. A little bit on top to get that going. All right, I've kind of cleaned up my desk a little bit, so that way all the little bits are now back in their box, where they'll probably stay until, well, I feel like having them out so long or something like that at some point in the future. But until then, I've just got the medium-sized airflow in here. There's not a button in the bottom of there because I like that kind of air, and we're just going to put this thing all back together. So how we put this thing together is pretty straightforward. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our chimney. We're going to get a little bit of e-liquid on our fingers. We're going to, actually, you know what, I'm going to do a little of that. We're going to get a little bit of e-liquid on our fingers, make sure this is lubed up. We're also going to do the same thing on the O-ring. And we're going to drop it down in the Boro. And we're going to work this back up through. Now, you do need to be a little bit careful. You do have an O-ring in the top of the tank, and it's an O-ring, but it's made to be moved. All right, so there's a middle section here in the chimney where it kind of can be, but you want it all the way to the top, so go ahead and snap it all the way up to the top. Get this, and we're going to take our deck, which has I laid it down, it fell down, that's a bummer. We're going to take the deck, we're going to kind of drop it down as well, and we're going to get a pair of tweezers, and we're just going to feed it down like that. We're going to make it so it's at least relatively lined up. We're going to give this a little bit of a push. That's it. I mean, we're assembled. It's not bad. It's pretty easy. It goes right together. So the last step here is to get our glass back on. Now, we have talked about this previously. I do want to re-emphasize the fact that this gasket will make or break your experience with a billet box. If this gasket comes out, it's a pain in the butt. But to be honest, I haven't had that happen in a very long time. And why? Because I lube the bejesus out of that thing every time I put it back together. You also may find that there is obviously a rounded edge side to the glass, and then there's a kind of a pointier edge. The rounded edge goes up. And you also may find that yours has a bit of a bevel on the top. And a friend of mine just recently pointed out that one of his is not. It's beveled, but it's not really noticeably beveled either way. Mine actually is. This one's got a slight bit of a bevel on it, so I'm going to put that edge down. So that way when I slide her up, it doesn't deform the thing. So like I said, I was kind of overdoing it with the lube there, but go ahead and wipe that down real quick. So open her up. Juice her down, and the one thing I should probably mention here while we're filling this thing up is capacity. So you may have noticed that the Xeta does look large. It looks like a large atomizer inside of the Boro, and I was a little concerned about this at first, to be perfectly honest. I thought that was going to be an issue. But Steven from Haku has done a couple of things, including one of which was fluting the chimney there to make it a little bit smaller. But we've now done some measurements, and I know Steven has, and I think Todd said he had as well, and it holds 4.5 mil. 4.5 mil is a lot of e-liquid. That's a pretty nicely sized tank. So I've been pretty happy with that. So that's it, man. So that's all there is to it. drop this down in your billet box. Now you can use the top nut down at the top, or if you happen to have an integrated omen tip, as I do here. I lost my other one, which is a real big bummer, but that's it. Let's grab this thing here. Let's make sure we've got good contact. Looks like we do. All right, let's get out of here. Let's go vape this thing. See that thick vapor? 21 watts. It's a good addy. All right, let's do some pros and cons real quick and wrap this thing up. First thing, flavor. In my opinion, is the most important thing. If you've got an atomizer that's got a bunch of bells and whistles, but the flavor's kind of meh, it's not a very good atomizer. Previously, the Xeta was my bar. This thing easily matches it as far as vape quality and flavor goes. So that's awesome. The build variation, you saw that in the up close. The 3 different airflow things that you can adjust up and down. The juice flow configurations you can change around. The fact that you can wick it like an M wick, like you can wick it like an S wick. You can wick it out like the sides like an Xeta like I did. It's awesome. Those build variations are really, really cool. Now, the argument could be made that the whole jack of all trades, master of none. The only thing I can say to that is Steven's clearly done a lot of engineering. He has taken each one of these ways that you can vape and kept them what makes them special. And he's done that with hardware, right? So it's not just frou-frou or whatever. It's there's hardware backing up, making each one of these things special, and it works. It just works. I think that's awesome. As far as the build goes, the build deck itself is fantastically easy to build on. It's one of the ways that it knocks the Xeta really out of the park. The Xeta has the whole screw head thing, wrap the wires and screw down the screws. None of that here. Now, you do pay for that, right, with some juice capacity. With a better deck, it tends to be a little bit bigger, but it's still 4.5 mil, and that's still really, really reasonable as far as juice capacity goes for the billet box, which is great. The 510 built in is solid. That's one of the things that Xeta brought to the table. I love it. At this point, I don't know how it would do without it. I don't know if I could recommend a billet box addy that didn't have them on there. That's solid. It's not outrageously expensive. It's $95 plus shipping. There are a lot of things that are a lot more expensive. There's a lot of things that are a lot cheaper. This is right in the middle, and considering all the stuff that you get with it, to me, it is a steal at that price. There's no leaks. Everything fits together well enough, perfectly well, in order to not have any leaks. I have 0 leaks. No condensation plugs necessary. If you are getting leaking, then I'd be checking your O-rings on your Boro. I'd be checking your wicking. It's not the addy's fault. I would say it's probably a PEBCAC sort of thing like that, like IT says, right? A problem exists between keyboard and chair, but maybe between mod and chair or something. I don't know. The last pro that I wanted to mention is Haku itself. So Steven is one of the most kind, nice, genuine people that I've met in vaping. And I don't say that lightly. Those are things that I value as a human personally anyway. And he just is. He's a nice guy, and he's always got a good attitude. It's always positive. And even when I'm giving him negative feedback, he takes it with the exact same aplomb as he does when I give him positive feedback. He doesn't just want to hear, oh, this thing's best. He wants to know when things are not right with this testing thing. He just does everything right, and he's not everything right. I'm sure he doesn't do everything right, but he does a lot of things right that I can tell, and he's a nice guy. The other part of Haku is obviously his admin team. I know some of them. I know AA Ron, I know Ace, I know Loren. They're great guys, and I love the fact that he's got people all over the world to help facilitate, shipping and that kind of thing. So that's really cool. There's a couple cons. You do have to be in the Haku group on Facebook. I know Facebook sucks. I don't like Facebook either, but just sign up with a fake name and give him a fake birthday or something. I don't know, just be Joe Smith, or unless Joe Smith is your real name, then be Joseph McSmith or something. Just get on the Facebook and get the good stuff. I do remember from Todd's review for the Xeta. By the way, if you haven't watched it, you should totally go watch Todd's review. He did mention that he was kind of bummed out a little bit that you have to take the build out in order to replace the airflow buttons. He's absolutely right. You do have to do that. Personally, for me, after I was testing all the other things and I found out how I like to vape it, I don't ever do that anyway. So I suspect it's going to be the same for you when you get one. That said, also, if you're going from direct to lung to mouth to lung and you're wanting to go back and forth, you're going to have to replace your build anyway, because those are different builds, right? You're not going to direct lung, the same thing your mouth lunging probably, and vice versa. So, it is a thing. He's not wrong, and do need to mention it. The other thing, I have searched some people saying that they don't really care for how high on the deck away from the bottom of the Boro that the wicks are. I haven't personally had a problem with that because I don't know about you, but I don't vape like this. I tend to vape like this, and when you're vaping like this, your e-liquid's everywhere inside that tank, and it's gonna vape. I vape plenty enough juice out of each one of the tanks, and when I get low, I just refill it. That's just what I do. I did want to mention it in the cons section because I have heard that. That's just me. And also, speaking of which, real briefly, I do have a friend that said that he has had a hard time mating the chimney and the deck inside the Boro. I would suggest just taking the glass off like I did when in the up close earlier. That's the easiest way to do it. I do that anyway because it just makes everything easy. It just gives you the full access, so to speak, and it's real easy when you do that. The last thing I want to mention real quickly is something that happened a little while back after the first couple lists ran. 4 people, I believe, out of those hundreds or however many of the Xetas that they sold, 4 people came back and said that their positive post broke, which is not good. That's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. But the reason I wanted to mention it is what happened afterwards. What happened afterwards was Steven said, obviously we're going to replace those positive pins. Don't sweat it. We got you covered. But then he said, I believe his phrase was, that's not Haku enough. So he said, how about we just send one to everybody, just in case you do have a problem. And we're talking about a problem that's like a fraction of a % of the numbers sold. He's just going to make sure you're covered. And then he went back to the drawing board and beefed up the positive post so that wouldn't happen again and offered to send that one out too. How freaking cool is that? That's a legit question. How cool is that? I know there are companies right now in vaping that have made a poorly designed Addy, like the Addy itself was messed up, and they sold it. Everybody found out that it was messed up, so they went back and fixed it and released a version 2 and sold them, including sold them to the people that bought their first version that sucked. That's terrible, and that's one of the reasons why I keep coming back to people like Haku that make good shit and that care about the customer after they receive their dollars. That's one of the reasons why I still do business with Limelight. It's the exact same thing. These people are good folks that want to make sure that you feel like your dollars were well spent, and they care about you after they got your money, and that matters to me. It should matter to you. If it doesn't, what do you know? All right, I have rambled on long enough. You guys take it easy. We'll talk to you soon. Later. This review, but let's talk about it today. Let's go. Why did I make that noise? I have no idea. Okay, let's go. I want to give you a little tour, show you what's up. All right, man, let's go. I did it again. God bless it. Why did I make that noise? Oof. Let's try not to do it this time. Wasting Diet Cokes. Yeah, they won't go to waste.